This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. Well, we're back. Doctor Who returns for season 2 / series 15 / season 41. Whatever. As if it's ever going to make sense. But we are on our second season with Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor, with Russell T Davies in charge. And how do we kick this off? Well, I would say that I think, personally, this is one of RTD's better openers. Understand that is grading on a curve, though, because I consider openers to be one of RTD's weak areas. Rose did the work that it needed to do to set up the show for new viewers and everything, but the actual plot and the progression of that outside of the direct character interactions between the Doctor and Rose was not much to write home about. New Earth, I think, is just terrible, really, except for one of the last scenes in it. Smith and Jones, still RTD's best. That was his best season opener and also an amazing intro for a companion. But then we had Partners in Crime, which I know some people swear by. And look, I love Don as much as anybody else, but I really don't care too much for that story. It's silly, it's cheesy, it's what we tend to get. And understand, this pattern from RTD was not restricted just to the series proper. The first of both sets of specials that he did. So first there was The Next Doctor, which also leaned into silliness, wackiness, a certain amount of disposability. Although it did have some solid scenes in it, mostly having to do with the so-called Next Doctor. I think some of that stuff is good, but again, the overall actual core plot, not much to write home about. Star Beast, the lightest and fluffiest of the specials we have with Tennant back, and then Space Babies, do I even need to say more? This is what RTD does, and this is kind of what I said about the previous season. I know some people really, really got ticked off by the time that season was done, and while I have my criticisms for it, I've been vocal about them. I don't understand why anyone was surprised. I was a little bit disappointed that he decided to just show up and pretend like it's still the mid-late 2000s and just treat it like he did when he was running the thing previously. But as soon as I realized that was what he was doing, everything was the same playbook. So I don't know why anyone was surprised with the end of last season, and I don't know if anyone is surprised with this. A reminder, I do get my own reviews out before I look into what the general consensus is amongst fans or other critics or anything else, because I don't want their opinions to color my own. So I have no idea how this has been received. But if anybody is surprised that this is what we get, like, why? This is very much in line with what he does. But as I said, I do think this is one of his better ones. This might actually even be his second best opener behind Smith and Jones. I'm not sure I'm prepared to commit to that, but I'm at least open to the possibility. It's not his best. Smith and Jones is still the best one that he's done, but this is pretty good for him. It maintains that largely lighter, fluffier, just rollicking adventure kind of tone, which again is not a tone I have a problem with in Doctor Who. Actually, I tend to like it more often than not. It's what he always leans on whenever he does a season opener. So, regardless of my feelings about it, it's exactly what I expected out of him. And when somebody gives me exactly what I expected, that can be nice. It's not going to be mind-blowing. And this isn't. But why don't we start with Miss Belinda Chandra? Or just Belinda. Or maybe just Belle? I noticed the Doctor already started calling her that. I'm going to go with Belinda for now because she did correct somebody else by saying that her name was Belinda, although that person just flatly got her name wrong. But until she signs off on the nickname of Belle, I'm going to go with Belinda. So I'll wait and see if that happens. I think she is pretty well characterized here. There's a number of things about her that I think come across really well, and especially her attitude of, the nurses do all the work and the doctors just hang out somewhere and just stand around. The thing is, that might sound like a cheap shot, but, my mother is a nurse, or was a nurse. She's retired, but that was her job her entire life. And I got some energy from Belinda that is like, I'm familiar with that. That feels authentic to me. So that stuff worked for me. I think in general, she has that sense of like not really putting up with other people's crap too much. A little bit in a Donna way, although her overall personality hardly feels like a retread of Donna. But she does have that same sort of, yeah, no, you're not just gonna say that. You're gonna stop and you're gonna explain yourself to me. She has that energy, which I like. I don't need it in every companion, but I like it when I find it. She appears to have it. She also seems to roll with things pretty well. I don't think necessarily in like a Bill Potts kind of automatically sort of leaping on, like has questions but just accepts a lot of stuff kind of way, but a little bit more in a, okay, how much I believe or don't believe what is currently going on is not my biggest issue right now. So I'm just not going to bother worrying about whether or not I believe what's going on right now. It's kind of the energy I get from her. And again, it's pretty solid. And this is a decent introduction to her as a companion, strictly because I get a decent sense of her personality and a little bit of an early sense of how she is going to be with the Doctor in terms of their Doctor-companion chemistry. So we're off to a solid start as far as all this stuff goes. So that works out decently well. I do actually quite like the aesthetic that they go for. It's kind of this 1950s tin wind-up toy or almost theme park kind of aesthetic, with the color palette and the shapes and the design. And like, I would not want that standard. I don't even necessarily ever want to see it again on Doctor Who, but like committing to it as an aesthetic, I kind of like it. It's distinct, certainly. And like, this is a world, especially with the story that's being told, this is a world that could have been completely generic. It could have been absolutely generic sci-fi, could have seen it anywhere. This feels a little bit more like, how many other shows are going to show you a planet with this aesthetic other than Doctor Who? I'm not going to say it's zero, but I am going to say it's not a lot. So I appreciate that commitment to a very specific aesthetic. That gives it just a little more feel, a little more flavor, a little more of Doctor Who silliness in a way that I like. I sometimes feel like the show leans into silly a little bit more than I would like it to, but there are other times where I'm like, that's a good amount. I feel like the aesthetic they went for this planet, that was a good amount of silly. General note, Murray Gold, composer Murray Gold, dial it back a little. Man, this was one of the first notes I took, because when we're seeing Belinda with Al, don't worry, we'll get to Al. She's plenty to talk about. Let me get there. When we see her with Al early on, like his score was... It was overbearing. Like, it didn't need to be there really at all for those scenes. It certainly didn't need to be standing out as much as it did.
And it's Miss. Do you like it? Oh.
Yes.
Murray, I like your work a lot of the time, but you're not John Williams. And even John Williams overdoes it a lot of the time. Let some moments be low key. It's okay. I promise it won't hurt you. So you just get that one off my chest. And I might be the only one who feels that way. I know a lot of people cheered when Murray Gold was announced to come back. I didn't. And not because I don't like his work. A lot of my favorite soundtrack tracks ever composed are by him working on Doctor Who. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have preferred, a different energy. But whatever. I had him for 10 series. That was enough. He was good, and that was enough. I was ready to move on. But whatever. Since we're in the early part, probably something that I suspect has been a little bit contentious, or at least I should hope so. Russell, the cat. What the hell, man? Like, what was that? Like, that felt like some Chibnall nonsense. That felt like that kind of casual callousness that you just didn't think, is this gonna bother anybody? And like, I get that like this wasn't Belinda's cat. I actually got the impression that wasn't even anybody in the house's cat. If I followed it, it was actually like the cat of a neighbor who was wandering around, and you know, I could go off on a whole tangent about you know, cats roaming the neighborhood, especially at night, but you know, I'll save that. And like, so I understand why Belinda wasn't especially torn up, and I understand why the people in the immediate vicinity of this aren't especially torn up. But then, like, why'd you do it? If all you need to do is establish that the gut, like, they could have disintegrated literally anything. They could have disintegrated the dishwasher. That might have even been a funny visual. This wasn't funny. Come on, man. You're better than that. That was, ugh. It just felt gross. Didn't care for that. Mrs. Flood is back. I don't care. I don't care. I didn't care last season, and dragging her as a mystery box out specifically over 2 seasons does not increase my level of caring with Mrs. Flood. I don't care. When we inevitably find out what the hell her deal is. I heard somebody say that like it leaked, but they didn't say who it was. If it has, don't tell me and don't put it in the comments. I mean that. I really do. Don't be a jerk. Because like we're here to talk about this episode, not speculate on future ones. So, But whoever she turns out to be, until we find out who it is, maybe then I'll care. But the buildup, I don't care. I'm going to have a video coming out soon. It might be later this month. It might be next month. I'm going to talk about the importance of actually getting your audience to care about a mystery as opposed to just presenting a mystery and expecting that to hold our interest in and of itself. I'm going to have a whole thing about this, and Doctor Who will not be the only thing I cite in talking about that. But yeah, I'm going to go off on that in detail. So we'll move off Mrs. Flood because again, don't care. Just don't. I did like that when Belinda landed, the Doctor was already there and had already been there for 6 months. Now, it is interesting with the whole, first of all, I like the way he described it, the whole, time went swoop. I don't know, swoop is fun. It feels like a more succinct sort of wibbly wobbly timey-wimey thing. Oh, swoop. I don't know, I liked it. I don't think the show firmly pulls it all together. Oh, reminder, while I don't want speculation about future episodes, I am going to talk spoilers for this one. I'm not going to have a spoiler-free section. So, you should have watched the episode already. I should have said that before. Whatever, we've been talking the early parts. But now I'm going to reference something that's later on, so that's why I'm telling you. The whole thing, my assumption is the whole cause of the swoop was the touching of the 2 certificates. I assumed that was the ripple back effect that, threw everything off. That's not firmly established, which makes me wonder if the cause of the swoop is meant to be its own mystery box, in which case we're kind of doing 2 mystery boxes. I guess it is. I guess it ties into the image we get at the very, very end, which I'll get to. But I don't know. I guess I would have preferred it more self-contained. It seemed like that would have been a nice little bow to put on it, that it was the 2 things touching that just caused all these ripple effects and bootstrap paradoxes that shouldn't be there because you did a thing you shouldn't do, which is put 2 the literal same thing in the same place at the same time, which actually is a rule that Doctor Who hasn't dealt with before, at least not that I recall. They've dealt with paradoxes for sure, but specifically the issue of the same thing in the same physical space at the same time, I don't think they've dealt with. I think most people who are familiar with that being an issue is probably from Time Cop, which screwed it up when Sorry, I am going to tangent on this one. This is a pet peeve of mine. I like Time Cop. It's a fun, cheesy movie. But it always bugged me, even the very first time I saw it, that they defeat the villain by pushing him into himself, so he comes in contact with himself, and they're in the same place at the same time, and that it's a weird, lousy CGI effect. But the thing that always bothered me is what happens is one of them gets pushed back, the other's like, no, and it touches his hand, but his hand touches the guy's suit. Unless his hand is the same set of atoms and material as the suit, nothing should have happened. Sorry, I've been festering on that one for decades. Anyways, It is a fun time travel conundrum to bring up, and it's a specific aspect of paradoxes that, again, I can't recall Doctor Who touching on before. So that was a fun thing. So the overall thing of like the robots already being in control and needing to free the humans from them, solid enough setup. That works. Sasha 55, I have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, I think it's pretty firmly established at this point that if any character who isn't the primary companion says to the Doctor, "Oh, I can't wait for you to take me to travel and see the stars," or whatever, or anything like that, they are guaranteed to die. It's the equivalent of a sergeant saying, "I'm only 2 weeks away from retirement" in a cop movie. Like, there's no way you're surviving to the end of this thing. That's just a death sentence saying that. Or, saying I'll be right back in a horror movie. About the same survivability rate. So I don't love that we're falling into that frickin' thing again. It's been pretty well trodden already, but sure, go ahead, bring that back. And what I will say, though, is that I do appreciate the weight that was put behind her death by multiple characters, by the Doctor, by the other rebels. Although, like, the one guy who, like, really got on Belinda's rear end about Sasha dying, like, it's not her fault, dude. And could you pick up a second character trait? Like, I understand he's angry and he's mourning, and like, I understand why he's behaving that way, but like, it made him incredibly one note and very on the nose. But I do appreciate the overall weight being given to what otherwise could have just been a fodder death. We get a sense of history between her and the Doctor. And I know it's become a little bit of a meme that, the Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor cries every episode, except he's really good at it. And like, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but like, it's not enough just to have a tear. Like, you have to sell it. And he's really, really good at that. He's really good in that moment where he's just kind of looking off and the tear rolls down and he like kind of chokes up a little, but he can't stop. He's got stuff to do. So he has to keep moving regardless of the very visible pain that he's experiencing. What I like about that, in contrast to some other Doctors who we've seen kind of push the pain down, I think Tennant, in his run as 10 at least, had a tendency to do that.
He said, "Last of your kind." What does that mean?
It really doesn't matter.
I kind of like that he wears his feelings a little bit more on his sleeve, but ultimately still moves forward to deal with what needs to be dealt with. It's interesting, and it's a level of emotional intelligence to kind of show that, like, just because you can't, stop and properly process doesn't mean you have to shove the whole thing down and not deal with it. You can have your emotions be evident and still function and still move forward and still be helpful and still sort of situation. I mean, I like that. I appreciate that as a sentiment in general. I think this particular Doctor is really good at selling that. So how about we talk about the villain? The Great AI Generator, which at first I thought, are we going to do some commentary on like generative AI and algorithms or stuff like that, which, could go off the rails, but I'm certainly here for. Screw generative AI in all its forms. But no, that's not where we're going. It's a misdirect because it's not AI, it's AL, as in Al, as in Belinda's old boyfriend who was a controlling dick. Just to be blunt about it. And, well, okay, so first of all, I didn't see that twist coming. That did catch me off guard when it opened up and there he was. I was like, oh, okay. You caught me off guard with that. So I guess props for that. There's a few things about this that don't sit quite right. Let me say overall, I think like the idea is functional, especially with all the other weird time stuff that we are weaving into this story already. Sure, let's go whole hog on it. And I really like the idea, and I kind of would have liked if the show had properly grappled with this a little bit more, but I really like the idea that it was Belinda's fault. Because like when she first got captured in her haste and her frustration, she names him and they go back for him. And that's what causes just even more problems. When I realized it was her fault that they went back for him, I was kind of like, oh my gosh. The show doesn't really do much with that fact. I do like it as a detail. I like it a lot. I would have liked the show to actually do something with it. They don't really, but it's certainly an interesting conundrum, and that was another aspect that very much caught me off guard. But there's a few things that seem off. Like, here's my main question. Does this guy want to be defeated or not? Because earlier we had introduced the every ninth word the robots can't comprehend thing, which, like, I liked overall. Like, it's a fun quirk. Like, I enjoy random quirks like that. Like, is there a logical reason why it's like this, or why the robots can't fix it, or why it ever would have started happening in the first place? Probably not. But the universe is big. It's weird. It's quirky. Stuff happens. Stuff goes down in weird ways. It's fine. I don't sweat that too much. And I thought it was a fun little quirk. But they bring it back, and they have like this quick little thing of Al being like, "Help me, save me." But then nothing about his behavior after that lines up with the idea that he actually wants out of this thing. So, like, was the idea supposed to be that the human part of him wanted out, but the, like, whatever AI-ness he was melded with wouldn't let him go? Because, like, other than that one little quick moment montagey thing, nothing about the performance sells that idea. So what the hell was that? That I didn't love. That threw me off. This is a slightly odd thing to single out. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it by way of a comparison to actually another moment from this very episode that I liked. I kind of would rather they hadn't specifically used the word incel.
Planet of the incels.
Now, like, here's the thing. I am not someone who says, you have to handle politics subtly at all times. You can't say exactly what it is you mean. That's bad writing. It's not. It's not. Sometimes it is, but it's not automatically. There are times that you should be absolutely clear about what it is you're saying and what you mean by it. There are other times, though, if that is not your primary point that you're making, that, yeah, maybe it's a better idea to be a little bit more subtle about it, if only to respect the intelligence of your audience. Because the thing was, I'm not going to lie, I had the thought in my head, oh, he's a frickin' incel. But then something about the show coming out and saying it after I'd said it, it didn't make me feel clever, like, oh, I'd realized it before I said it. It made me feel slightly condescended to, because I'm like, yeah, no, I got it, show. You didn't have to say it. You didn't have to say the word. And I said I'd do a little comparison, because earlier, when Belinda was talking to the doctor and there was the whole thing with the X-ray blanket, which, like, that's a cool conceit. I like that. Just in general, I think that's a neat idea. But there's this moment where Belinda asks, which body is better? And the doctor's response to that,
If you start deciding which body is best, you're going down a very dangerous path.
And that's a good line and a great point. And it's a point that would have felt lessened if he'd actually said the word eugenics. Like, he could make the point without having to cite the word, because, again, this episode isn't really about eugenics. Just like it's, I don't think at least, really about incels. Like, incels have more of an impact on this narrative than eugenics does. I'll grant you that. But just that, this overall sort of twisting adventure narrative is not making a grand political point. And I don't think you are, when you start labeling the specific things, when you're not going to drill down on it and make it the primary point that you're focusing on, it feels a little like buzzwords. I like that. That's putting it slightly harsher than I feel about it in this episode. But yeah, no, it was just a slightly off moment for me when I actually heard the word said. That having been said, you know what I did like? And it took a little while for me to like it. You know what I did like? The polishing robot. Polish. It reminded me a little bit of things like Mo in Wall-E, which is a deeply overrated movie that I actually don't like very much. But I do like the robots in it. And I like them, this focused, determined, just going about this one single job. And the polishing robot did initially annoy me a little bit with this little polish, and saying the same thing over and over again. It's a little bit like, I got it. Like, you could have just said it once the first time so it was clear what this thing was doing. It didn't have to keep saying it over and over and over again. But, like, by the time we got to the end, I got over that. I still stand by saying it would have been fine to have not keep saying that. But like, I got over it enough to be like, no, actually, this thing's kind of cute and adorable and helpful. I like it. I like Belinda's commitment to wanting to do the right thing and bring things to an end. Like even before she puts herself in danger by touching the two diplomas together. Not diplomas, certificates. Did I call them diplomas earlier? I can't remember now. I'm not going to go back and fix it. You have no idea how busy this month's going to be for me. So much stuff is premiering this month. If you're not already subscribed to my secondary channel, Break Room of Geeks, there's going to be a lot of stuff going up this month because there's a lot of stuff airing all at the same dang time right about now. But anyways, even before the idea that like she was going to have that, and she willfully puts herself in danger doing that because she was told by the doctor, like it would be very bad if this happened. But she was willing to sacrifice herself just to bring an end to the pain that was happening to everybody else, which again, I think establishes her very well as a character. And I think makes sense for somebody who's chosen nurse as a vocation. That is a line of work where you kind of have to care about other people a lot and be willing to sacrifice quite a bit of yourself in order to do it. Oh, you know what was another thing that was like done subtly compared to the incel thing? Her living condition. Like you'd think having a full-time occupation as a nurse, she should be able to afford her own place, but she's living with at least 2 housemates. Yeah, that should be a strong indicator as well. And again, that is a decently subtle dig at a current, very politicized issue of cost of living in the UK. But again, you didn't have to draw any more attention to it than you did because you did it and you moved on. That was great. So anyways, but the overall sense that we get of her from her willingness to go, if other people are getting hurt and I can stop it, even if it means something really bad for me, I'm going to do that. I appreciate that as a strength of character thing and as just really establishing who she is. So I'm not 100%, like I wouldn't be shocked if Al circles back around in some way, because like there's little bits in the moment where we like see him as an old man, and like I don't know if that's stuff that's going to circle back around in a later episode. I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not necessarily calling it. Here's one thing I am going to point out though, and it might mean something, or it might just be an indication of a cut scene, because when the Doctor and Belinda get the TARDIS back, Belinda says,
Is that your TARDIS?
Isn't she everything?
I can't find anywhere in the episode prior to that where she heard him call it that. He calls it his spaceship when he's giving his backstory to her, but she already knows it's called the TARDIS, despite also not knowing its deal. Like she goes inside and is shocked that it's bigger on the inside. Again, I'm actually kind of inclined to believe this is probably indication of a cut scene or a cut bit of dialogue that covered why she knew what it was called. And then this is just the result of that. But I'm just going to highlight it on the off chance that it's something. I don't think it is, but just in case. Just in case. At present, I am okay with what they do connecting her with the character who we saw last season, with Mundy. So I did a whole video talking about my frustrations and personal distaste for super special companions that seem designated by fate, aka the writers, to be ultra important just without any agency or any real choice on their part. And it's not something I cared for. And I was worried they were going to do that with Belinda. And they still might. Let's be clear, that still might happen. But in the meantime, I like that the initial cover is just, oh, I met your descendant. Oh, okay. Well, if that's all we're going to do to cover this, that's good enough for me. Like, I'd actually argue you didn't need to do that anyway. Like, it's okay. Doctor Who has brought back actors to play new characters. It has been doing that since the classic era. You don't have to draw attention to it, but fine. Fine. If you're going to, that's fine. That's not putting a ton of weight on it. They still might later, but at least for right now, I'm going to settle on that and be like, okay, cool. That's fine. The idea of trying to get back and like bouncing off the specific date. As a notion, I actually generally like that. It's a little bit reminiscent of Angels in Manhattan, where the Doctor could not go back to that point in time and get Rory and Amy back because the Angels had done so much time shenanigans there that like the whole place was just, it was too much of a mess. The TARDIS couldn't handle it anymore. So it's not, it doesn't, at least it doesn't appear to be quite the same thing, but it did remind me of that. And I think that's a solid notion to bring back. And as far as mystery boxes go, that's a better one than Mrs. Flood. The idea of why can't the Doctor get back to this date? Except we kind of got a hint as to why, which is Earth's destroyed. Again. Okay. The Earth being destroyed or threatening to be destroyed or whatever. Like, okay, we're doing this again. Like, the visual was pretty neat in terms of the floating debris. It was a neat mix of things, iconic items and so forth. Like, it wasn't presented badly visually. I just was like, oh, okay. I would have found it much more interesting to have no hint as to why they couldn't go back to that specific date. And like the Doctor still had to do this let's go the long way around thing, but he doesn't even know what the problem is yet. I would have preferred that because that would have been a mystery box with a little bit more weight, because it would have been like, it would, well, first of all, it would have actually impacted the characters. That's part of my issue with Doctor Who mystery boxes in specific, is they have effectively zero impact on anything until the eventual reveal happens most of the time. Mrs. Flood's actually a perfect example of that. The Doctor hasn't even noticed her yet. She has had zero plot relevance so far. She just keeps popping up and going, oh, I'm still here. Yeah, I don't care. But if you were to introduce a mystery box by immediately having it be a problem, like, we can't go to the state. Well, why the hell not? I don't know. I guess we got to figure that out. That is actually impacting the characters' decisions, what happens to them, the narrative as a whole. Except you kind of already gave the game away that, like, Earth's destroyed. I don't know. I just feel like it would have had more weight to just have us not know what the problem is. Granted, we still don't know what caused it, and there's that, but just, like, knowing the outcome diminished it a little bit for me. I feel like I've been complaining more than is actually warranted, because, again, it's worth stressing. I do think this is one of RTD's better openers. It's pretty strong. It works at a good pace. There's good moments with Belinda, especially, getting real highlights on her character. And I like the overall aesthetic. It's got a good bouncy pace. And even the stuff that I complained about, there was usually stuff about it that I still liked. You know, there were aspects of Sasha 55 dying that I didn't love, but there were other aspects I thought worked quite well. And just as an overall package, I do think this is one of RTD's better openers. Certainly better than Space Babies. And definitely better than New Earth. God, that thing's But yeah, I think that about does it. Oh no, wait, it doesn't. There was one other thing that I really loved from Belinda. And again, kind of speaks to the specifics and the strength of her character. She had some lines that she said to the Doctor after he was like, oh, I've met your descendant, and put Monday up on the TARDIS screen. And she just looks at him and goes,
Is that what you said to Sasha? She trusted you, and she died.
that is so good. Because she's right. She's right. He did make promises and tell somebody else to trust him. And Belinda watched that person die.
You tested my DNA without even asking my permission. God. You're dangerous.
And he did violate her by just going ahead and scanning her DNA and plugging it into his computers. He didn't ask if that was okay. He just did it. And he's done it before. It's not, there's something about a companion who will call out a Doctor for stuff that they've just gotten away with up to this point. I tend to like that in general. Again, Bill was good for that too. And I enjoy that. And just this moment, there's this one other line that she has that I really love.
I am not one of your adventures.
Which is also great. Because I think you could argue many, not all, but many of the Doctors have a tendency to treat their companions with supporting character energy. The Doctor has a tendency to have main character syndrome, and while the Doctor usually cares very much for the companions, they do still have a tendency to see and treat them like a supporting character in the Doctor's story. And while that's not necessarily an aspect of the Doctor I want to change, a certain amount of arrogance from the character I think works. I don't think it's a bad thing to call it out because, again, it's true. So yeah, I like her especially. Oh, hang on, almost forgot. One last detail that I thought was really neat. When Belinda went and listened to the Doctor's heart, it did that same rhythm, the rhythm of 4, which I suspect some people are going to take to an illusion that the Master is coming. I don't assume that. That's just keeping it consistent because it was confirmed back in The End of Time that that was the heartbeat of a Time Lord. I think it's a continuity nod, and I think it's cute. Don't think there's anything more to it than that, but I like that it was there. And the episode overall is pretty decent, with some bumps and some nitpicks and some things that I wish could have been done a little bit differently because I'm me. And like, would this really be a Council of Geeks review if I had no complaints? I guess that does happen sometimes. It's rare though. It's a special day when it happens. It happened a couple of times last season. Will it happen again this season? We don't know. We'll find out. But in the meantime, what'd you think of this episode? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and is how I am able to keep doing this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, there's YouTube memberships if you'd prefer. But, just the like, share, subscribe, that all helps. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Zubin Lopfula, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Andre, Becky Sparks, Claire Wright, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Blahuvian, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mary Mello, Mira G, Sir Didymus is my favorite. I've never screwed that one up before. Well, if you want to hear me mess up your name, check out the rewards on the Patreon. I'm going to blame you.